office hours, and today is 10/3. It's well into fall now and getting dark. We'll have Garrett Chandler will be reviewing Intune and Windows Autopilot. So on that note, Garrett, if you want to take it away.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so we are talking about Intune and Autopilot today. It's one of my favorite topics to discuss. For those who are unfamiliar with Intune, Intune is Microsoft's mobile device management platform. It's a cloud-based solution, and we are able to manage a wealth of devices, right? We can manage Windows devices, iOS devices, Android devices, and Mac OS devices. Today, we do not support Chrome OS, in case you are wondering, but we do support all the other platforms. What I wanted to talk about with you guys today is how you can start looking at Intune as an extension to your current device deployment strategies or methodologies that you've implemented into your district. One of the best features about Intune is that it is cloud-based, and so we can extend the reach of our device management outside our four walls, right, of our perimeter that we're traditionally used to managing devices with. So we can execute remote commands, we can install applications, and we can also do some security auditing, right? We can actually enforce certain configuration policies even if devices are not on the network. We can integrate with the rest of the security stack. Azure AD, for instance, we can leverage device compliance for mobile devices to ensure that our student data is protected on the BYO devices or the devices that they may be corporate owned, but they are mobile. And we want to ensure that that data isn't getting leaked out, so we can ensure device compliance within Intune, mixed with the conditional access policies within Azure AD to secure that data. So lots of cool stuff. And I've got a couple of slides here. I don't want to focus too much on slides here. I know that's not the favorite item for this audience, right? We want demos and things like that. So I just have a couple of slides to run through the gist of this, and then we'll get into some live demos here. But what I want to frame up here is that you can start leveraging Intune to enable your users to be more productive, right? We can secure those devices, protecting them as well, and providing that managed and that good end user experience for those devices. On here, you can see that we're focusing on mobile device management, PC desktop management, and mobile application management. Kind of touched on all of those components that we can do within Intune. But I jumped to this next slide to show that we can extend your current investments in SCCM, right? If you are looking at SCCM and Intune, you'll see that sometimes there's some crossover, right? We can deploy applications with either or. And so sometimes we get a little confused on when we should be leveraging Intune in our environment or SCCM. And what I want you to walk away with is knowing that sometimes it's a better together story, right? We can integrate those two, and that makes sense for your environment, right? So we've come to this notion of unified endpoint management, right? And we have the most complete, most secure solution in the market, and we can leverage your existing investments into SCCM with Intune as well. So we've got some awesome configurations that we can implement, such as code management, to enable your devices to still be that domain join, still get those large applications, but then we can enforce some specific policies within Intune. So really cool stuff. What I'd like for you, though, to do is start looking at your environment today, and we'll touch on like Windows Autopilot here in a little bit, but start looking at your environment to see, can we start looking at our Windows devices as mobile devices, right? Can we join them directly to Azure AD and then manage them directly with Intune, right? That may not be the best use case for all of your devices today, but it might be something to start looking into, right? So we're going to do a little demo here of the Intune console in just a moment, and then we'll talk about Windows Autopilot. Just kind of a quick primer on Autopilot. Autopilot is our automated provisioning service for Windows deployment, right? So when we start talking about modernizing our deployments, we want to look at what are the cycles that we're investing in our resources today, right, internally, right? We want to get out of building these gold images that take up a lot of time, and then building out the infrastructure to deploy these Windows OSs to these desktops using Pixie or whatever infrastructure you have in place today for doing so. But how can we modernize that a little bit and streamline that approach, also to free up the cycles for you guys so that you can focus on things like security, right, and protecting that identity for our students and staff. So really quick, I'm going to jump into a demo here. I'm sharing my screen right now, and for those of you who haven't seen the Intune console, this is what it looks like. The Intune console is fully Azure based, right? It's all in the cloud. And what I'm actually leveraging now is the new Microsoft 365 device management portal. You'll often hear it called DMAC, the device management admin console from Microsofties. And this is, I've actually come to love this more and more and more because this brings all of the best capabilities for those who are device management administrators, right, in your environment. You got all of the access that you need to bring that holistic solution into one view here, right? We've got our quick access to Azure Active Directory, device configuration, device enrollment, software updates, etc. So this is the new device management console. Love for you guys to start checking out. It's just devicemanagement.microsoft.com. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to give you a brief overview of Intune to give you an idea of what some of the power that we have behind it, right? So within Intune, we can come into device configuration here. We have this idea of profiles. And when we create a new profile, we can come in here and we can say, let's say, MS Office Hours profile test, right? And we can actually come in here and select which platform that we want to target, right? So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to choose Windows 10 because it's my favorite OS. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to choose device restrictions, right? And we've got all of our settings that we can come in here and we can start managing Windows 10 in a modern way. This is very similar to group policy. If you're familiar with group policy, most of us are. It's a little bit different, right? The vehicle that we are applying the policies directly to Windows is a little more modern, a little bit faster, a little more efficient. So we've got some cool configuration items that are in here. But if you start digging deep, you might notice that there's a few things missing that what you're typically or traditionally used to being able to deploy. But what we've done recently is brought in administrative templates, which you're familiar with group policy here. I'm going to bring this setting up here because this is super exciting for me. You can see that we now integrate a bunch of group policies directly into Intune. You can see we've got 109 pages of different policies within Intune. I think there's over 300 now configurations or admin templates that we can use to get you there. So start exploring that and seeing where you can start modernizing your environment with Windows today and get off some of the legacy domain joining, pushing group policies down, things like that. What I want to jump into next is the kind of spend some time on the autopilot portion here. And I actually have a slide that's a little more EDU centric to give you a good idea of how the Autopilot service works. Autopilot, for those who don't know, it's our automatic provisioning system for Windows devices, but it is a service, right, that we offer. So we actually work with you to set up a partnership with your reseller. So if you have devices coming through like CDW Insight, some of those partners, or if you're buying direct from Dell or HP, Lenovo, we can actually work with them. Whenever you purchase new devices, they will actually create a connection to your tenant. And whenever those new devices are ordered, there's a hardware ID that's attached to every device. And the partner will go in and they will upload those hardware IDs directly into your tenant. So then we'll actually create an Autopilot profile. the device is shipped to the school or to the IT admin center, right? And you can define your profile within the Autopilot service. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. And we can define what that deployment looks like. So as soon as the device arrives to the school, they break open the boxes, right? Super exciting time. We're going to pull it out of the box. We're going to open it up. We're going to turn it on, and then we're going to connect it to Wi-Fi or hardwire it. And as soon as we connect to the network for the first time, it's going to trigger a call out to your tenant because that hardware ID belongs to your tenant, and it's going to pull down the profile that's associated to that device. And then it's going to auto provision. Right, this is super cool. So we're out of the traditional imaging and we're going more into a transformative experience where we're taking the base Windows OS and we are transforming it to your corporate standards. And so it's classroom ready within a matter of minutes, right? So how do we do that? So I'm going to come in here. I jumped back into my device management console over here. I came over here to device enrollment. Now I'm going to click on Windows enrollment. You can see right here, we've got a devices node. I've got a couple of devices within my tenant here, just a couple of VMs that I've spun up. But this is what it looks like when the devices are actually provisioned into your tenant. It's just the serial number. And you'll start seeing whenever the partners integrate into your system, you'll see the devices populate into here. If we jump back over to Windows enrollment here, we also have deployment profiles. I'm going to create a quick profile here for you guys. MS Office Hours, Autopilot Profile. And we walk through this new view. I don't know if for those who may not have seen this now, it's a full screen experience, and I'm super excited about it because it used to be this slim little navigation bar and we had to type all the information in. Now it's a nice full screen experience, so we're super excited about it. So we're going to go ahead and click next. We're just giving the profile a name. And now we have two modes that we can select from. We've got user-driven and self-deploying. So user-driven is a mode where as soon as the end user opens up the device for the first time, connects to Wi-Fi, it's going to prompt the user to sign in with their school credentials, right? So your Office 365 credentials, they will sign in and automatically it will leverage those school credentials to populate the device into a group. And because Intune is still a fully MDM platform, we can deploy applications, we can deploy those settings. If we enroll the device directly into Azure AD, which is what we're doing here in this one, it's going to auto enroll into Intune, and then it's going to put the device it's going to put the device into a group, right? And then any applications that are assigned to the device or any applications or settings that are applied to the user are going to apply during that provisioning time. Right, we can go ahead and hide the software terms. You could show them if you want to, hide the privacy settings, the account options here, we can hide all of that. Again, this is all the out-of-box experience that we're configuring here so that when the end user opens up the device for the first time, they're not clicking next, creating their own local account and bypassing all of your systems, right? It's automatically connected to your tenant, pulling down this profile configuration. Super cool stuff. The other option that we have is self-deploying. And you notice that when I select self-deploying, it changes the options that we get here. You'll notice that today we only support Azure AD join. With user-driven, we do actually support hybrid Azure AD join. And we can now, this is super new and super exciting, is we can select our language and our region. So that I'm going to select English here. United States, and configure the keyboard layout. So all of these prompts during the out-of-box experience are not showing up. And this is fantastic for the self-deploying. So the self-deploying means that once the device is turned on, connects to the network, no credentials have to be input into the device. It's going to start provisioning automatically because it found this profile. We can also apply device name templates. So let's say MS Office Hours dash, serial number here, if I can spell correctly. We support the serial number variable and the random variable. Today,
there was a question, Garrett, as well on
sure.
Can we also configure BitLocker or passwords as part of this?
I think we can do the BitLocker deployment through a configuration profile, and Richard is also on the call, so I'm going to ping him. Can we do that during the Autopilot profile yet, Richard?
Yeah, so in 1903 plus, you have the capability now for standard users to be able to encrypt the drive via BitLocker. The other question, though, I think that was asked was around changing the password on the BIOS. And
Yes.
BIOS passwords can be changed via vendor-supplied tools. So Dell, HP, Lenovo generally will have some sort of tooling that they will provide, but there isn't anything native in Windows that will allow us to give you the capability to change the BIOS. It's going to have to come from the vendor.
Thank you, Richard.
Awesome, thank you. And then there's another question here about what about OU assignment? Again, for the devices that are being joined to the domain, they'll have to be moved, right? They're going to go straight into the main container within AD, but within Azure AD, we don't have the concept of OUs, we just have groups. So we'll just add it to the selected groups here. So once we build out our profile and configure it the way that we want to, we can assign the profile. I'm going to go ahead and select the group here. And then we're going to review and create that, right? So I've just created this profile. We can come in here and we can start looking at the assigned devices that have the profile assigned to them. And we can just review the settings within here and edit them as necessary. So very similar if you're familiar with like Apple deployment and the device enrollment program. I think that name is actually recently changed for Apple management. It's a very similar concept here. I also want to bring up the fact that we do have a white glove service, right? So we can actually work with the partner or the vendor who we're purchasing our devices from, and we can do a full white glove service within Autopilot that's fully supported. So really cool stuff coming out. But it's all integrated directly into Intune, right? So once the devices have been transformed to the image, quote unquote, that we want, right? We can then start controlling the configuration profiles and deploying the policies, getting apps in there, and even software updates. One specific call out that I also wanted to make, if we go back into our Windows enrollment, is the enrollment status page. And I'm going to click on the one that I've got defined right now here. And the enrollment status page, this is a fantastic use case for if we're deploying devices that are user driven, right? Because a lot of times we go back to this notion that we have golden images because we want to perfect the Windows image so that when we provide the device to the end user, it is in a perfect, pristine condition that we know that we've enabled the end user to be productive as soon as they open up that laptop or that device, right? And so the enrollment status page is a great indicator that you can leverage for the end user to understand what's going on during the provisioning process before the device is actually ready to use. So once Autopilot starts pulling down its profile, once it's connected to the network, the enrollment status page, you can configure it to be on or off, right? But if it's on, it will actually give you a status page of where it's at in downloading the specific configuration policies or downloading the apps that are being installed, so that if you want to define a specific set of apps, like maybe you want Microsoft Edge, the new CREDGE, right, to be on that device before the device is ready to be used, then let's wait for that installation to complete. And the enrollment status page is a great indicator for that end user to know where in the process of that provisioning that the device is at. So really cool system to use, and we're even starting to integrate with SCCM too. So I think there's a user voice item out there where we can say, let's ensure that the config man agent is installed. So we're looking at bringing support in there too. So really cool stuff. What I want to leave with you guys is a few different resources. So I'm going to throw some links into the chat, and then we'll do some final Q&A here. So I am going to type in aka.ms/simply Intune. And that's going to bring you to a collection of resources. I didn't really dive into the Intune for Education portal. Know that there is an Intune for Education portal that you can use that has a simplified management experience. As great as the DMAT console is, Intune for Education is even more simple. But this is a collection of resources that you can use to get started with setting up a free trial, even doing a small pilot within your district or university, and then all the resources and docs that you need. On top of that, I've created a separate one for Autopilot for Education, which is all the Autopilot resources specific to education. And what I really want to call out is something kind of new. We have a in development page for Intune for Education. I showed you how we walked through the process of creating a profile within the DMAT console, right, within the large Intune product. But what I want to call out here is that we'll soon be able to manage Windows Autopilot profiles directly from the Intune for Education portal. So we can configure those deployment profiles. We'll be able to create dynamic groups for Autopilot registered devices based on group tags, which is super exciting. And then we'll be able to monitor and review the device deployments directly from the Intune for Education portal. Another great resource to check out for Autopilot is Michael Niehouse's Out of Office Hours blogs. Michael Niehaus, if you're not familiar with the name, he's the lead engineer on Autopilot today. He's practically the inventor of Windows deployment back from the business desktop deployment days before MDT was MDT, right? He's now one of the lead Autopilot engineers. So a lot of wealth going, and I would say a lot of wealth and focus, right? On Autopilot. It's kind of the future of Windows deployment all up. So this is a fantastic blog to leverage for resources if you want to start playing around, get under the hood of how Autopilot works, digging through MDM diagnostics, things like that. This is a fantastic blog to look at that. So with that, I will look at any questions we have, and feel free to come off mute if you have questions.
That was great, Garrett. I'm going to stop the recording just in case every now and then we get some questions that we'd rather not record. So I'm going to stop recording, and then we will go from there. So just give me 1 sec here. If I would ask too, if you can forward, I saw that you showed a couple of slides. If you can forward those over to me or send me